Maybe we should donate some money to change that thing. But it's really a beautiful mountain. It's really high. It gets snowed in the winter. Very beautiful. So I just wanted to show you that next slide. And one more push, please. So, to be a professional, it's like climbing up the mountain. You hear this analogy a lot, right? You got to climb up the mountain to go to the top. You're high schoolers, so you're starting to think about your career and everything. And there are multiple roads to be professionals, right? There are multiple roads to get to the top of the mountain. It's really important because you'll be climbing up the mountain for many, many years to go. Even though you become professionally trained out in the society, you still have to continuously be trained to get to the top of the mountain. And there are many ways to get to the mountain. You can see that people climbing up the mountain, sometimes they have a snow truck to haul you up to the top of the mountain. You can drive up to I'm talking about a Mount Washington. To get to the top of the Mount Washington, there are several ways. Now, you see that if in the red font, if for the survival, if you're climbing up the mountain for the survival, meaning that somebody's chasing you and they're going to kill you, you have to get to the top of the mountain in order to survive. Just like how we try to survive out in the real society. If you have to climb up the mountain, not for the joy, but to survive, which way would you pick to climb up to the top of the mountain? Okay, you obviously don't want to climb like this. It just is, a lot of people, I'll show you, most people climb like this on a rope. They climb up step by step. If you don't know how to get to the top of the mountain, that's what everybody does. Most people, majority. And during the really high risk, it's snowed in, and if you slip, you're gonna fall and you're gonna die. People still climb up like that. Other people who knows how to get to the top of the mountain, and they use cars and snow trucks. Okay, that's the roads I'm gonna talk about. Next slide, please. Again, to get to the top of the mountain, I think taking a car is easy. Sometimes getting to the mountain, the roads are nice. During the roads of the life that you're about to experience for the next 60, 70 years, or perhaps maybe 90 years. Sometimes it's smooth, sometimes it's rainy, sometimes it's snowed in. Sometimes you have to go through this really risky road where if some stranger pushes you off, you fall off the cliff and you die. And actually, I heard about 3 to 4 people die every year riding the car to the top of the mountain because somebody makes a mistake. You sign the consent that it's all your fault. Anyway, so the road is always there. Okay, get to the top of the mountain to get your career built. We just have to find it, which is the best way to get there. Okay, next slide. Did you know? I didn't know when I climbed up the top of the mountain. I took the car. I didn't know, but there's a railroad built in the Mount Washington. The reason is they have a conservatory for the first weather conservatory for the United States they ever built. The first one is on Mount Washington. It's on top of it. Okay, and they built the road and they have a train going there up and down all day long. I didn't know it. So I took the car. I thought that was easy, but a lot of people were coming up using the railroad and hopping onto the train. You just have to pay I think $50, and zoop, it goes to the top of the mountain. You don't have to go through the risky road where if somebody pushes you off and you fall off the cliff, and you don't have to take the risk. You just take the train, rain or shine, snow, day, dry. It doesn't matter. All year long, you can get to the top of the mountain. If this was the road that you know how to build your career, wouldn't you be interested? Say yes. Of course you'll be interested. If you know how to get to the top of the mountain and there's a railroad built in for you, you'll be interested. I didn't know. I grew up in the United States and still building my career just like this. I didn't know that. Even for this mountain, I didn't know there was a railroad built in, and I just have to hop onto this little trolley. Next. So you are climbing up the top of the mountain all your life, lifelong learning. So where's investment? Investment is the green font, the green part. You start from elementary school, you spend 6 years, middle school 3 years, high school 3 years. That's most of you here, right? And then college comes up. Average college graduation is about 5 point whatever years this year's. Then the graduate school, professional school, 4 to 7 years, depending on which graduate school or professional schools that you want to go. And the postdoctoral fellow period or residence, if you go into medicine, another 4 to 7 years. That's all investment, the green line. Look over here. It's 25 years, 30 years of investment. You spend 25, 30 years investing just on your education, right? And then there's a real job for this career establishment, climbing up the top of the mountain. There's a real job. That's the return. You invest all this time, up to 30 years, you better spend that time right, because we're going to live for the 30 to 40 years, and you want the good return, wouldn't you? You want that return. If you mess up over here, you're not going to get a lot of return here. I'm not going to spend a lot of time dwelling on it. We could talk more about it during the panel session, okay? It's very important. You guys are all below 30 years old. You guys are going to live to 120 years old. Did you know that? I'm telling you, my generation, who are 60 years old, we're going to live to 100. The medical devices, medical technologies advanced to a point where we're going to live 100. Absolute 100. People who are 30 years old, you're going to live 120. You are stuck here for 120 years old. It's a serious thing, right? The kids who are born now, they're going to live to 140. Serious thing. You're going to have to open your eyes and ears and figure out what you need to do to get a good return, right? Okay, next slide. But there are a lot of things you go through. You don't like. You want to try. You want to be a musician one day. You want to do this the next day, the next year. There's a lot of changes. Even though you go through college years, there are changes. You're in high school. You want to become a doctor. All of a sudden, the next day, you want to be a lawyer. Next day, you want to be a policeman, the fireman, whatever, nurse. Well, that same thing happens even during your career establishment period. That's a problem. This one is investment time, so you can change. If you keep changing up here, wouldn't that be a problem? You keep changing your career? Because that's like you're falling off the mountain. You barely grab onto something, you're climbing up again, you change your mind and you change your career. Change your career means you go from postman to doctor to somebody who owns a deli shop. That's a changing career. Not just changing jobs, I'm talking about changing career. Okay? Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Now, this is not my data. This is United States government data that I'm about to show you here. This is from United States government. Put yourself in top 5% category. What does that mean? Look at this pie. Okay? Average bottom 80%. This one. About 80% of people own 7% of wealth. All the wealth that's going around you, 80% will only own 7% of the wealth. 5%, top 5%. Sorry that we have to talk about money at church, because faith, God. We're not willing to, that's not what we always talk about at church, but I'm just giving you a reality check. If you're on the top 5%, you own 85% of the wealth. If 5 to 7% wealth, that's a majority. Majority of us out there only own 7% of the wealth. What's this pie here? Can you read that? Nearly half of it. Top 1%. If you're in the top 1%, 1 out of 100, you own nearly half of the wealth. Okay? You climb up the mountain, you better make a good decision. Otherwise, you keep falling behind. You're probably going to end up here. Majority of 80%. You have to be well trained to be on the top 5%. At least try to get into 70 to 80% range of owning the wealth. Okay? Now, U.S. Department of Labor. This is U.S. government. What does it say? 3 median years a person stays in one job is 4.5 years. Right now, in 2008 model, one person stays in one job for for 4 to 5 years. Average person will have 15 job changes during 50 years of that career, okay? Probably change career 3 to 4 times in their lifetime. Again, you're a postman, you become a nurse, then you decide to become deli shop owner, then you decide to become, I don't know, a lawyer, whatever. That's a career change. You keep changing your career. If you don't know what you like, that's what's going to happen. United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is United States government data. It says less than 20% of all jobs are advertised. Does that freak you out? All the jobs available in US now, only 20% are advertised. Does that shock you? Up to 80% of all the jobs are hired through other means. Network, a recommendation. Doesn't matter how genius you are, if you're just going to go to monster.com and try to get jobs, you fall into this 20%. 80% of the jobs are not advertised. Does that shock you? It should. Next slide. So, how do we do that? First, you have to build your well-being, and especially career well-being. You have to like what you do. You have to build a passion. You can't just keep changing your passion. It's not like changing boyfriend or girlfriend during your, high school, college years. You gotta really stick to something that you like. If you really want to become a medical doctor, and it's in your heart, you gotta stick to it. Okay? So how do we do that? This is a career well-being. First, you have to know who you are. Who am I? And next, you have to figure out, how do I get there? If I want to be a medical doctor, how do I get there? Who am I? What's in my heart? That's what I'm talking about. What's out there? Do you know what's out there? Well, you're here because you want to figure out what's out there, right? Because I'm about to tell you what's out there. And you already got some shocking information. In order to have all of this, and you have all of this in the centric model, it's a career well-being. You know what you like. You know what your passion is. And you pick the job. You were educated for it. And you're going to build your career and start climbing up the mountain. Okay? How do we do that? It's very simple. You prepare, and you prepare, and you prepare. Well, how do you prepare? That's why you're here. You ask. You ask. You ask. Why don't you not ask? If you don't know, you ask. Well, I feel like if I ask that question, it sounds like a stupid question, and I feel stupid. Who cares? Okay, if you don't ask, you're not gonna jump onto the trolley that I talked about. You're gonna just roam around and start, hopping onto the rope and climbing out the mountain. Why do you want to do that? You ask. That's why we have 10 panels here. You need to quickly jump onto the trolley and just keep asking. Be confident, be passionate, and be certain. You gotta know what you like. If you want to become a lawyer because your father and mother wants to be a lawyer, forget that. Don't ever do that. Don't ever listen to your parents. If you want to be a someone and your heart says, I want to be a musician, you stick to that. Okay? But make sure that's what you want. Not because you went to a concert and you like the musician playing music. Okay? You look into your heart every time. But if you figure out that you're on a wrong road, make sure you change it. Don't just be there. Because if not, one of the days you're going to change your career. You were a medical doctor one time and you decide to become a lawyer. If you keep changing, you're not going to be an expert. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Next slide. This is interesting data. Death of a spouse. You married to a person, you propose, giving a wedding ring, and you love them to death, and you decide to go through marriage, and you live 30, 40, whatever years. And your spouse died. Okay? Versus employment. In this case, it's unemployment. This is a life satisfaction index. Now you live with a spouse for many, many years, and spouse dies, your wife or husband dies. You're very unsatisfied, your life satisfaction index falls, you're very sad. But 2 years, you're normal. Does that shock you? Yeah, you live with a person for many, many years, your husband and wife, it could be your parents too. They died, you're sad. 2 years later, on average, you recover. You start to actually climb up. You're happier. Does that shock you? Well, it's true. It's scientific data. But if you have a really low self-esteem career that you don't like being a doctor, you don't like being a lawyer, you don't like being a nurse, I don't care what you do. If you don't like, your life satisfaction index is low forever. It never recovers. So what's more important? Your husband and wife? Again, that's just a joke. But what I'm saying is, your career well-being is very important. I just want to tell this to middle school and high school students. You have to have a good career well-being to stay healthy. So you have to start to think about it when you're in high school, especially when you're in college. Summary. How to career well-being. You gotta know what you want to be in 5 years. Do you know what you want to be in 5 years? Well, you have to. Why? Because I told you have to prepare and prepare. You cannot say, I want to be this, and you decided that, and you want to be a lawyer. And you can't decide that you want to be a lawyer 1 year ago. You haven't prepared yet. You didn't have time to ask. Here you are faced with 10 panelists. You're about to ask them. If you're a college senior, you're a little late. If you're a high school senior, if you're a high school freshman, this is good, because it's time for you to ask. Okay? And then figure out if this is what you like. Next, meet people that meets the criteria and ask how to. Well, that's why we're panelists here. You meet people. You want to be a lawyer? You keep chasing around lawyers and ask them, why do you decide to be a lawyer? What's a law like? You keep ask. Throw a lot of stupid questions, because you gotta answer that, your curiosity, right? So prepare, ask. That's why this is prepared. And test the water and collaborate. Test the water with collaborators to see if you really enjoy what you're about to enter. If you want to be a dentist, work with a dentist during the summer or during school years to see if you like looking into a person's mouth every day of your life. You get up in the morning, you start looking in people's mouth. Do you like that or not? You gotta test the water. If you want to be a lawyer, work with the lawyer's office and see if you like looking at documents, hundreds of pages every day. If you don't like it, if your heart is not set on it, you probably is in the wrong water. Again, don't be stuck with something that you don't like. Don't become a medical doctor if you don't like working with patients. My youngest brother was like that for a while. He's a medical doctor. He didn't like working with patients anymore because he was really tired of working with sick people every day, morning to night. But he got over that. Next slide. This is kind of interesting statistics, but I'm not going to dwell too long on it. This is a medical school entrance statistics. Look, Asian population, we have about 20 million Asian population in the US. That's about 5%. About 40,000 Asian kids go to college every year. That's pretty good, actually. In Asian kids, including Koreans, Korean Americans, 30% of total. Of 150,000 kids go to college every year, and Asian kids represent 30%. And we only represent 5% of the population. We're pretty darn good. Okay? Forget about this, because this was another data. Here, it tells you all the different colleges where they send schools to the medical school. Now, here's an important point. Why only average of less than 0.5% of Asian kids apply when there's a 30% Asian kids go to college? Why only? Again, I'm coming from the medical background, so I have a lot of data like this. Why 30% go to college and only 0.5% apply to medical school? I don't know. You gotta look into your heart. we have a culture that parents never ask kids to look into your heart. They want you to be doctors, lawyers, or whatever. Parents never really look into kids' heart. You have to learn to look into your heart and tell your parents that that's not what I want. Stop telling me that. I don't want to go become a doctor. I want to be something else, okay? This data shows 30% out of kids go to college, only 0.5% apply to medical school. And out of this, only 15% gets in. Whereas Caucasians, 45% gets in. That's nearly half. Is that interesting? That data should shock you. If you're white, you apply to medical school, 2 out of 1 person gets in. You Asian, especially Korean, 15%. Are we worse than whites? Absolutely not. We are much better than. Never mind. Next slide. So this is reiteration of that. 2014, 50,000 applications, 20,000 enter the med school. Okay? You gotta learn to look into your heart and make sure you want to go to medical school. Remember, 15% gets in. Okay? So there's something wrong with what we teach kids, what we tell kids. Next slide. This is interesting data. I want you to look at it because you're high schoolers and middle schoolers. This is from 1970 from now. What's this? It's a math Olympiad. This is a world's math Olympiad team. What's this blue line? This blue line is Jewish. Jewish dominated in the early 1970s, 80s. Who dominates now? Asians. Everybody thinks Jewish is smart. This is not to harass Jewish, but that's just the data. Okay? This is college Putnam math winners. Again, we dominate Asians. So it's here. This is physics competition. And we have capability, but you have to start learning into your heart. You have to figure out what you want. Okay? Next slide. Korean diaspora. We are spread all around the world. China, US, Japan, Canada, it falls in, but mainly 80% of Korean diaspora in US. We're here. Okay? Major Korean diaspora. In order to utilize what I told you, first prepare, second ask. You gotta look into your heart, make sure you figure out what you want. Okay? That's why all the panelists are here. But in order to really utilize that, you have to learn how to network and secure your future. Does that mean anything? Network? You have to really learn to network. Non-Koreans, Koreans, and others. This might not be doesn't maybe come to you directly, but you have to, how do you network? Can you network when you just do texting all the time at home and playing games? You gotta go to a lot of parties. This is something against what parents tell us. Okay. Not parties to get drunk, but you need to go to parties to meet people. Okay? Find excellent platform to build your network. Like church is a good network. You have a seniors coming back to teach you or tell you their story. Ask. It's a good platform. They're gonna come back, maybe they will do this program every year. Get involved with professional network. Like medical network, lawyers network. I don't know what you like, but you get into professional network and start asking them. And then prepare yourself. Next, please. And that's it. Did I need 10 minutes? Is it a little bit over? Sorry. But that's it. So, with that, I think the next step is to turn the lights back on and have panelists come forward. And Hannah is preparing a icebreaker.
Okay, so right now we're gonna do an icebreaker, and if you don't know what that is, it's for us to get to know you better and for you to get to know us better. So, we're gonna like go up to you guys and like, like have a conversation with you and get to know you better. I feel like that's easier than all of you coming up to the table. So, yeah. So we're gonna like go up there and like ask them stuff about them. So. Okay.
That's bad.
That's it.
That's a bad icebreaker.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna start now. No, you have to go up. Hi.
Hello.
Hey guys. What's your name? Hi. What?
Are you, what grade are you?
My name is Devin.
Senior?
Hi guys. That's you.